I just want to begin by talking about some of the negotiations that have been going on. We have put forward a proposal for a hybrid parliament, which would include virtual and physical sittings at the same time, in addition to 4 sitting days over the summer. This is something that will help us hold the government to account, make Parliament work, and we're prepared to support that, but our support is contingent very clearly on 2 things. First and foremost, that the government commit to paid sick leave for all Canadians. This is vital. We're in a pandemic. No Canadian should have to choose between going to work sick or staying at home not knowing if they can pay the bills. So we need a commitment very clearly on paid sick leave before we can move forward with any other motion. In addition, the government committed, and we asked the government to commit to previously help for those living with disabilities. We want to see that action. We want to push the government to actually deliver on help for Canadians who are living with disabilities. So without those 2 things, we will not support the government. With those 2 things, we are prepared to support. Thank you for the question. We put forward a motion a couple of weeks ago saying that for people to get back to work, they need to know that they have paid sick leave, that people should have at least 2 weeks of paid sick leave. And initially, the government voted against that motion. We are continuing to make it clear that we need a commitment that the government is willing to provide paid sick leave for all Canadians. Now, to make that happen in the immediate term, we're suggesting the government can use something like the CERB or employment insurance to deliver that program federally immediately. But we want to see something that is long-term, and that will require working with provinces and employers to develop a long-term commitment so that forever in our country, everyone who needs paid sick leave will have access to it. But we want to see the initial, immediate commitment from the government to do what's necessary to bring in place paid sick leave for all Canadians right away. That's one. And on the employment or on the support for Canadians living with disabilities, in a motion a number of weeks ago, we pushed the government to commit to help Canadians living with disabilities because none of the programs so far have provided help specifically to Canadians living with disabilities. A reason why we've said that CERB should just be made universal so that anyone who needs help should be able to apply for it. But absent that, we've pushed the government for help for seniors, to include students, and now we've also won a commitment to include Canadians with disabilities. That's something that we got the commitment, but we haven't seen the action yet. And that's what we're waiting for, is some announcement on clear action on help for Canadians living with disabilities.
And so as a follow-up, are you going to basically withhold any support for this motion until you hear an announcement, somebody to see some action, some tangible action on that?
Yes. To be really clear, if the government does not deliver on paid sick leave for all Canadians and real supports for Canadians with disabilities, then we will not be supporting the motion. Well, we've pushed for what we believe is the best way to ensure that we've got MPs from around the country able to voice the concerns of their constituents with the hybrid model. The Conservatives did not envision that. They are talking about an in-person only. We believe that we need to have voices from all Canadians and those who can't travel to Ottawa for various reasons, people from different walks of life who have childcare issues because many provinces don't have schools reopened. So for various reasons, we want to make sure that there's the option for MPs around the province, around the country, to be able to have their voices heard. And secondly, we wanted to have sittings throughout the summer. Given this pandemic, given the crisis that we're in, we want to make sure we can hold the government to account during the summer. But I can say around the existing model that we've used, we've been able to use it to push the government to expand the CERB to include more people, to increase the response from $1,000 to $2,000, to push the government from a 10% wage subsidy to a 75% wage subsidy, to include seniors who were missed entirely, to push the government to commit to including Canadians living with disabilities, and to push the government to include students. All these things were possible because we were able to, as New Democrats, push the Liberal government to deliver on these things. And now we're going to continue to try to push for more and push for paid sick leave for Canadians. All these things were possible with the current model, and we are confident we can continue to push the government to deliver better for Canadians. And we know they wouldn't have done it without being pushed, and that's why we want to have these regular sittings so that we can continue to push the government.
But just to follow up,
sure.
You and the government keep calling them sittings, but they are not sittings. They are meetings of a committee. Parliament is not sitting, and this motion will suspend Parliament again until mid-June. So why not just recall Parliament instead of having more committee meetings?
I'm not hung up on the form of Parliament. I'm really focused in on how we can use Parliament to work for Canadians. And for me, that's really the only goal here. I want to follow the public health experts' advice in terms of limiting exposure and limiting the number of folks in Parliament so that we're able to maintain physical distancing. But for me, it's not the form as much as the essential work that's getting done. And we've been able to do that work with the existing opportunities in Parliament, with the Committee of the Whole. The questions we've been able to ask, the negotiations we've had have pushed the government to deliver more for Canadians during this pandemic. And that to me is the main focus. We've got to make Parliament work for Canadians, and that's what I'm focused on.